Hello there. Welcome back to the Sky Guys podcast. We are diving through our character study pods this week. We are continuing the series with Mon Mothma and Luthen 101. We're going to do the rebellion side of the storyline. We'll cover that stuff this week. My host, Mike Phillips. Really, Pete Consadori is with us here this week, but unfortunately, had to cover a shift at Luthen's shop for us. But Nick Fraietta is here with us as always. Nick, how are you?
Doing great. We, I say this every week, but we are getting close.
We are getting close, and we did get a fill in here. We had some Luthen sent us a Rebel Cell member to sort of be our pilot for this here. Nick D'Alessio is back with us. Here, Nick, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I was wondering what you were gonna use as my Andor related thing, so that was good. I like that.
Yeah, you didn't give us an assumed name, but you want us to call you, like unlike Cassie becoming Clem.
I was gonna say Clem, so I guess not that.
All right, so Clem's
I
here.
forgot Clem.
Yeah, yeah, Clem is here with us this week to fill in for Pete. Pete will be back with us. Actually, just so the audience knows, we're doing a re-release next week of an old episode of the Rogue One coverage. We actually rewatched Rogue One and Andor. That's coming out next week. Pete will be back with us in 2 weeks, but you can't hear Pete's voice on the episode next week, Nick Fraietta.
You can because it's pre-recorded and he was here when we recorded it.
He was. So, as always, I'll mention here, people want to subscribe to the Sky Guys. They can do so Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon, all usual suspects. Simply search for the Sky Guys here, podcast platforms. Well, episodes there here. And we're getting ever closer to the run up to Andor 2. And it'll be, before you know, it'll be gone. So make sure you're subscribed so you're here for the whole journey with us. No, Nick D is.
I am. I was actually wondering. I'm kind of the filling in for Pete, so all you got to do is just press a button, subscribe. It's that easy.
Yep. You guys will see that Nick showed us the button on the YouTube version. It's all right. That's on both the Mike Phillips YouTube channel and the Sky Guys YouTube channel. So just to remind everybody that once we hit Andor 2, once we hit the first drop of episodes, all the videos are going exclusively to Sky Guys podcast on YouTube. So check that out here. And Nick Fraietta, social media. I want to remind people how to keep up with us there.
Sure. You could follow pretty much everywhere at Sky Guys Podcast, and you could email the pod at Sky Guys Pod. No cast, just pod.
Yeah, because we still haven't figured out who exactly claims Sky Guys podcast.
I wish we can figure that out.
Yep. And we also wrote a social media comment of the week. I'm going to throw back to when the last time Nick D'Alessio was here. We talked about the Star Cruiser Hotel. There's a comment on TikTok from T Jenks 80. We were discussing that there's a path for success with the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser regular hotel. T Jenks 80 says, what about a themed hotel like Yavin 4? Us normies could afford it, but they could still have the larger full immersion for the 1% and events in between. So, Nick D'Alessio, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like what Pete was saying, right? Like that was basically his idea. Is like, well, not the Yavin 4 specifically, but like, what if it's just a themed hotel and all those side attraction things are just like a part of it, but not like the main thing that seems like that would have been a good idea.
Yeah, I know, Nick Fair, you were not here for that episode. You had some stuff pop up work wise, but what do you think about this discourse about this hotel and what happened with it?
I think I listened to the episode and I don't want to diminish the episode of the Sky Guys being that I was on it, but all we needed to say was it cost too much and you could have ended the episode there. And that's really about it.
Yeah, also throw an honorable mention here to the comment on the bottom from M who says, right, I guess all most fans really wanted was a themed hotel for their fandom. LARPing's never really been Disney's thing beyond your princess or in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, I think like the potential LARPing angle really did turn off a lot of people because, you know, that's not the normal thing for most people. So they kind of tried to go too specific, I think.
And I don't remember if you guys discussed this specific point on the podcast, but like you are going to Disney and you can't go to Disney.
Yeah, you're trapped in there for 2 days.
Right. Like that's I'm sure you guys mentioned that, but that's like that's another crazy thing. Like as soon as everyone learns that, they're like, oh, so like, yeah, we're gonna stay in this hotel, and then we're gonna hit the parks. Like, oh no, you can't do the parks, can't leave. Like, oh, I'm not going there.
You think, yeah, you're like part of the story. You have to be part of the story.
Right. You're in outer space. You can't go to Disney if you're in outer space.
It would break.
You're in outer space when you go on the rise of the Resistance as well, but they let you come back.
Yeah, you're also on outer space and you're in Space Mountain also.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right, so let's get to some Star Wars news. And there was a bunch that just sort of popped up out of nowhere last week, Nick.
there was, and we're gonna try to go relatively quickly so we don't spend all the whole time here on the news. But Vanessa Marshall, Taylor Gray, and Tia Sircar, who are the voices of Hera, Ezra, and Sabine, respectively, from Rebels, have started a rewatch podcast of Star Wars Rebels titled Pod of Rebellion. And they'll be joined by John Lee Brody to rewatch every episode of the show and share behind the scenes stories and more. Really, really cool information that came out. That's really cool.
Nick D, you gonna subscribe to this podcast as well? Listen to the rewatch of Rebels.
Absolutely 100%. Yeah. I don't want to feel like I'm cheating on you guys, but like absolutely. This sounds like exactly what I want to be a part of. Yeah. I'm
Well, no
very
offense.
excited for that.
We take no offense because like we did not produce Star Wars Rebels. We don't have behind the scenes stories to share.
Right. And I just, I think I share with you, Mike, where I'm like, I kind of like Rebels more than Clone Wars. I don't know if that's a hot take, but like, so I'm like really excited for that.
I've been in that bandwagon the whole time.
You have the next piece of news is Giancarlo Esposito wouldn't comment when he was asked on whether he'd be in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. He said, quote, I hope to join that franchise again because I think there's I think there's more road from Moff Gideon. Um, I don't know. You think he'll be in the movie? I mean, I'm leaning towards yes, he will be.
I think he knows he's in the movie, just does not want to tell us that he's in the movie. I think he's supposed to be a surprise.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
The next thing here is I think the biggest piece of news here.
Yeah.
Is the Lucasfilm Animation will hold a panel at Star Wars Celebration, and they have promised to tease a sneak peek of what's to come. And we had predicted, I don't even remember when Bad Batch ended, that this is not the end of Star Wars animation.
Yeah.
There's going to be another 3D animated show at some point. I don't know what era it's going to be, what characters it's going to follow, but I'm sure we're getting another one of those shows.
Yeah. Nick D, any idea what you want the show to be about?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. I mean, I feel like I don't know. We've kind of already plugged in every single possible hole in the current timeline. Like, I would either want something way in the past or like way in the future, but I have no idea. I'm curious to see what comes out of that.
My personal opinion here, I would like to see what our original trilogy characters were up to in the Mandoverse timeline leading up to the First Order. That could be a good cartoon. But for me, my number one take, Nick Fraietta, can we like give the clones a break, please? We've been seeing clones for like almost like 20 years now.
I agree. We've been seeing a lot of clones.
Yeah.
Clones have been in just about everything.
Yeah.
Even things that they're not featured in, they're mentioned. It's just like ever since 2002, it's all we hear about clones. I mean, I understand it's a big part of Star Wars, but a lot.
And I will take more Ahsoka in the cartoon. It means I get a break from the clones.
I like your idea. I think it's a good idea to dip into the original trilogy the original trilogy characters. It's something that they haven't really tested the waters of yet. They've only really done it in the Lego shows, and I feel like we had mentioned like, oh, they do a Tales of series about like Luke. Let's say that was one of your ideas. I feel like they're afraid because of what I said. Like they're afraid to put like a big name character in those things, but this is a good way to maybe test the waters to see if you can do more with these characters in animation, that is.
Yes.
The next thing is EA and Respawn will host a panel at Celebration to unveil a new turn-based, like tactical game. And I don't like those kind of games. That's just me, but
We do have the video game guide.
I'm sure Nick does.
So I would like to know what Nick thinks they're going to do with this.
So I'm actually I'm not a huge tactical RPG kind of person. I mean, like they're fun if they're done right. I'll probably play it just because it is what it is. But like, I don't know. I think they're trying something new, so maybe it'll be cool. But yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that, to be honest.
Okay.
For reference, Respawn is, part of I think I believe they're owned by EA. It's a studio. They made the Star Wars, the Cal Kestis Jedi games, and they also made Titanfall and Apex Legends. So if you play any of those games, that's who's making it.
Yep.
The next piece here is the Chief Creative Officer of Saber Interactive confirmed that the KOTOR remake is still in development.
It will be in development for the next 10 years.
Yeah, we'll see about this one. Another piece of news: Star Wars Hunters, believe the mobile game, right,
Yes.
is shutting down on October 1st. So, you don't. I mean, maybe this happens more than you see in the news, but a lot of times, I feel like it's kind of somewhat rare to see these live service free to play games actually shut down. And this one did not last very long at all. It's only been out less than a year.
Yeah, the only example I can think of in terms of gaming shutdown, like I know like Marvel's Midnight Suns had this problem too, where like nobody bought it and they stopped supporting the game, I think like pretty quickly. So like that's the only comp I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it does happen pretty frequently with live service games where like they'll just kind of realize like it's just not worth it to keep those servers on versus like how much they're actually getting out of it. Especially like mobile ones. Like it also happened with like Final Fantasy VII. In the hype of all the game, they were like, let's do our own like PUBG live mobile kind of game, and that failed too. So I think it's not a model that has a lot of success, I don't think.
Simpsons tapped out,
Yeah.
literally. That was like the number one live service game, one of the first ones that started in 2012, and they just ended.
Long run for them.
Yeah. Next, in a new Star Wars comic called The Legacy of Vader 2, they retconned a previous piece of information that had Darth Vader killing Watto by saying it was a scene from Kylo Ren's imagination. So what do we think of that?
Can I just jump in here with this because this to me, like everybody complains the comic books are valuable, the comic books are canon. We can't rewrite these scenes we see in the comic books in live action. This came out 3 months ago, and we already said no, it didn't happen. This is why I can't take comic book canon seriously.
Maybe my only playing devil's advocate here is because it was so recent that it was planned like that all along.
Yeah, but they made a big deal of running the news like, look, Vader killed Watto, Nick.
Did they make a big news or out of it, or did social media outlets like, Star Wars pages just like go nuts with it when it wasn't really them promoting it?
Delesio, what do you think about this?
Did I'm trying to think like because I heard about it. What was your guys' take on like the general consensus of this? Because I kind of got the vibe that people were just like, okay, cool, I
Yeah,
guess,
same.
but like maybe you know the minority, loud minority made a big deal out of it, and they were like, oh, actually, it was in his dream. It wasn't a real thing. I don't know.
This is for freaking Watto. This is not like the biggest character in the history of the franchise.
And I don't think it has to do much with who the character is and what happened actually. This is more about like, can we trust comic book lore and canon? It being that so many things have happened in comics that we've seen retconned. For example, we're gonna see it happen in Andor almost definitely. K2SO meeting Cassian, which has been established already in a comic, and I think we're gonna see that in a completely new light, completely retconned. And we've had a lot of things retconned from comics, so I think Mike's point, which I agree with, is how do we even take these things seriously?
Yeah. I mean, the way I see it is that if the showrunner has a better idea, let the showrunner do the better idea. I'm not going to be tied down to what some guy wrote in a comic book 15 years ago.
100%. And did like Kathleen Kennedy and like Dave Filoni and whoever else is in charge of creatively, do they like read the comics and approve this stuff?
No idea.
I would imagine that it's sent to their desk in a summary form, I would think.
Yeah, I would think.
But who knows? All right, the last piece of news here is Tony Gilroy said in a Disney Plus YouTube event that Andor season 2 is going to show a lot of Luthen's backstory. Now, whether or not that means we're going to get a flashback or we're just going to learn about his backstory through the present day, what remains to be seen. But speaking of Luthen, that's what today's episode's on.
Well, I thought it'd be a good way to end it on here. And I do think, like, Nick D, does not feel like a show we're going to spend dedicated flashback time on Luthen. This might be something like that Luthen tells us, like in like a speech or something, or like he's having
Yeah.
a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I can't imagine they do like a huge flashback. I think um Yeah, there's a lot of mystery to his character, which we'll get into. So it would make sense that they want to expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, Nick Fraietta, the only facets you really got in season one were Cassian as a child. We didn't really get anybody else.
Yeah, and I think that's for the better. I mean, you know how I feel about flashbacks. I don't enjoy them. Now that I think about it, I think the only flashback. I'm just gonna focus on Star Wars television here, and not. I don't even remember if there's any of the movies. I'm not even thinking. But like the only flashbacks that I really enjoy with Star Wars television, like Disney Plus Star Wars television, was the flashbacks to the Jedi Temple of Grogu.
Yeah.
That was about it.
Not even Boa getting out of the pit.
No, I hated that one.
Yeah.
Not even the power of
I
many
didn't
or
hate
whatever.
Boba getting out of the pit. I hated all the flashbacks of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
That included.
All right. That it for the news?
Yes.
All right. Let's get into what we're doing here today. We're going to do the storylines for Luthen and Mon Mothma. Luthen 101, Mon Mothma 101. And then between the five characters we covered over the last 3 weeks, Nick Fraietta, I think we've done a good job sort of giving you every main storyline point from the season one of Andor between these five.
Yeah, I mean, who else would you even include here?
I mean, we're getting Saw today in the Luthen stuff.
Yeah, you wouldn't do an episode on Saw, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like Luthen's rebel crew doesn't warrant a whole episode, in my opinion. Like the Vel and Cintas of it all, of it all.
No
Maybe
for Tim, the most plain sounding Star Wars name.
I would have said maybe Bix, but even at that point, I feel like she gets looped in a lot of Cassian stuff.
Yeah, I think you
Great.
guys are covering the main important ones. Anything else would just be like maybe one roundup, but nothing major.
I think Bix is the only one that really doesn't fall into any of these for the most part because she does have some independent stuff. She just kind of get mentioned in the Dedra and the Cassian storylines quite a bit. A little bit here today when we see her deals with Luthen.
Well, let's talk Luthen.
Let's talk Luthen here. So we're gonna do we did it the last 2 weeks. We're gonna go through the arcs here and discuss like what we learned from Luthen as he goes here. So we first hear from Luthen in the premiere arc that he is Bix's black market contact. Bix reaches out to him because Cassie has acquired an Imperial Star Path unit. Luthen would like the unit. He comes to Ferrix to meet where they get ambushed by Karn and the Pre-Mor guys. They have a fight in the factory. They escape. At that point, like they have to run and Cassian hops on board and he is off with Luthen. That's our first introduction to him. So not a ton to report here really at the beginning, Nick D.
No, it's like a solid enough introduction. It's who's this mysterious guy? He's clearly does I don't remember. Does he already know a lot about Cassian at that point, or is that like kind of later on? Because you he does seem to know about him leading up to it, so that adds to that mystery of like, wait, who is this guy? What is his bigger deal? I think they do a good job of introducing that.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, it's really like you think he knows as much as Bix tells him about who Cassian is.
I agree. And you don't really get anything out of Luthen here in the first arc. You really just get
He you see
he's the buyer.
yeah.
It's really about it. And I remember when watching the show live, I remember thinking to myself, I'll probably just get this guy for one more episode and that'll be it. It ends up being part of the whole show. So you really don't get really anything out of Luthen in the first arc.
Yeah, I was surprised you would have thought that they would have had Stellan Skarsgård for 2 episodes of television and just let him go.
Three. Well, four actually, because it was
He would have been the next one.
yeah, four episodes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 4 episodes. We'll go right to the second arc with him, where we start seeing more of Luthen's move going on here. We see that he places Cassie inside the Aldani heist rebel cell he's managing because he is impressed by Cassian's piloting skills when they get away from Ferrix. He says, use an assumed name. I'm going to pay you, but I don't want these guys to know that you're in it for the money. So he drops Cassian off to a very skeptical Vel. He goes back to Coruscant. He assumes the serial persona of an antique dealer. Runs a shop that Nick Fraietta loved looking in the shop every figure out what Easter eggs they were hiding in the shop. He meets with Mon Mothma to offer an update on the rebellion that she is helping to finance. We find out he has some shadowy dealings behind the scenes. He hears on a radio the rate of success Equality celebrates in the back room of his shop here. I think one thing I want to touch on here, Nick, a scene that I remember when we had Vin Gallo on the podcast for this episode, we discussed like after he drops off Cassian and Luthen puts on the wig and he's like basically practicing getting back into his, rebel like antique shop dealer persona where he's, very friendly, very genial, very, like, oh, I'm just a guy like selling stuff. Like, what do you feel like would go nicely like on your wall? I feel like it was cool to see him like transform back into that personality he uses inside the Imperial world.
Absolutely. His shop is my favorite. No, it's not. It's not. It's my second favorite part of the show.
Yeah.
Well, first is it's the latter half of our episode here.
Yeah.
But um I don't really have anything to add about that. Luthen is I mean, like I said, the first arc we know nothing. The second arc we learn, oh, this guy's actually up to something. He has a kind of an alter ego here. He's part of the rebellion. You kind of hit the nail on the head. There's nothing really else to say.
Nick, do you think about like how easily Luke is able to like switch between like his rebel persona and his empire friendly shop owner persona?
I love that scene. If you didn't mention it, I was gonna mention that scene in particular because I just love that you see him, he puts on like the wig and then he's kind of like practicing getting back into character and then you see him get it and it's just such good acting to for I can't imagine how difficult it is for an actor to this is your character but then you also have to also pretend to be a different version of that character and he does it so well and just yeah it starts you thinking that like maybe this Luthen guy isn't just somebody that hires things on the side like there's a lot more going on to him and that's when you realize that at this point.
Yeah, I think it's important to see that side of him that he's able to like show different faces, different people, and we do get the connection here, Nick Fraietta, between Luthen and Mon Mothma in this arc, where like it turns out that like under the cover of like buying antiques for her apartment, that she's funneling him money for the rebellion.
Which I still get a little confused when I watch this in terms of the timeline. Is this the rebellion or is it rebel cells? Like, didn't we see in Rebels where the rebel cells combine into the rebellion? We're still not there yet, right?
I guess that's true. I guess she's at
Or
least.
are we? I don't know. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm asking.
I don't think we're there yet.
I like you. I think you're right. I feel like this might be she's working with Luthen's cell. I know at one point he goes to Saw's cell for help for something else.
Right. And there's a scene too, I forget if it's Andor or somebody else, but they're introduced to somebody and they're like, what are you? Are you separatist? Are you this? Are you that? He like names like four different groups. And then I think Luthen says like, we're all of them or something, or like we should be all of them. So like implying that there's still a lot of groups he's trying to kind of unite them all. So I think at that point it's not a full thing yet.
Yeah. So anything else you want to add here before we go on to the next arc for Luthen?
No, we don't know the last arc. You don't need it. The next one.
Yeah. All right. So next one here, after he learns what Cassian did on Aldhani from Vel, Luthen's assistant Clea, which we didn't know at the time, but we later find out for sure that like Luthen knew about this. She orders Vel to kill Cassian to tie up that loose end because he knows Luthen's true identity. Bix calls back out to Luthen for information about what happened to Cassian because remember she hasn't seen him since the premiere. He's not answered because he's worried ISB operatives are listening in on his phone calls. He then heads out to meet Saw Gerrera, trying to enlist his help for a cell that is attacking a raid on Imperial Power Station. Sauce is not interested in this. He does not think it's a successful proposition. A member of the cell running the raid gets caught, spills the details on the plan to the ISB, where we find out that Saw has a mole planted in the ISB, and he meets with this character several times over the course of this situation. After being challenged by said spy, who claims he's risking everything, Luthen's risking nothing for this operation. Luthen delivers a scathing rebuke to the guy, and I do want to play the audio on the podcast. It's one of the more impactful speeches of season one. I think right up there with the Kino Loy speech in terms of, and both from the same episode, by the way. It's from the Prison Break episode. But he agrees to protect his asset and says, like, I have to keep you safe. It's more important that I have my information from you than this one station, this one raid gets attacked. So before we go on, let's play this speech from Luthen.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight has set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost. And by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
It makes me so sad that like he'd not get an Emmy nom for this speech alone because like this was very, very good.
Great speech. We mentioned this speech like from the other side when we talked about Cassian because like he's fighting for something that he'll never see. The same thing Cassian did in Rogue One, which means that I know this speech is not to Cassian, but it doesn't matter. Like it's still you're still learning from Luthen. He learns those values regardless if this speech was said directly to him or not. And you're right. It was a fantastic speech.
Yeah, and Nick D, I did love the speech also from Luthen because he makes it very clear, like he knows that like everything he's doing, he will not reap any benefits of this. He fully expects like at some point, like I'm either gonna be dead or in prison when this thing happens here. I'm not gonna enjoy any of this, and like I feel bad that I have to, steal the Empire's stuff to beat the Empire and stoop to their level to get out of this situation. So he's in a very interesting spot mentally, and like he correctly puts this spy in his place. And like, I'm risking just as much as you are here.
Yeah, and it's you kind of like we don't learn about Luthen until just now. And it makes sense that like, in the history in the show that it all progresses where like this is only the first we only hear about Luthen because the show is about it. You don't hear about him in any like history or anything because he like did this knowing that nobody was going to know who he is. He knew that this needed to happen. And that's really cool, that and God, what am I trying to say?
Plus, also, like he knows, like I'm not going to reap any benefits of this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that moment like all this the whole season's like building up to like who is this guy, and then this is the moment where you're like, "Oh, this is the guy that's going to change everything." He's like starting it. He's like arguably the most important person in setting up the whole rebellion, like you could make that argument. So it's that this was the scene, that speech was the moment where you're like, "This is for real."
Yeah, it is for real. And I do think also like it shows the pragmatism of Luthen Nick Fraietta because we do see like that like he does considering the point that his mole has says like, hey, like I need to give them something. Otherwise, they're gonna figure out that I'm leaking stuff to you. So like he considers like, you know what, you're right. I should like let you have this win so that you can keep feeding me information.
Yeah. And to be honest, with at the beginning of the arc, when he gives the order to kill Cassian, I get it.
Yeah, it's a loose end.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. Like I know we're supposed to root for our title character and all that, but I mean I would do the same if I was trying to build this big rebellion and there was a loose end out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Cat in Luthen's mind, Cassian knows too much.
yeah, I don't disagree with him.
Yeah. That's for sure. And we do also get a lot like set up here of like what he's going on here. And before we move on here, what do you think about like the meeting he has with Saw, Nick Frey? Because like this is a very tense meeting where like for the first time in this series, like Luthen actually meets somebody who stands up to him in Saw and says, no, like I don't agree with how you're doing this, and like basically turns him down when he goes for help. Yeah.
Excuse me. Well, we learn a lot about Saw, not just here, but pretty much everywhere. I guess we learn a lot about Saw and all the things that he's in, and I don't know. You learn that he's to do things his way or the highway, which is why he more or less isn't even part of the rebellion when the rebellion comes around. He's still not necessarily for the Empire, of course. He's more of a
Burns
independent contractor, if you will.
Yeah, Saw's idea is just burned to the ground.
Yeah, it's like a whole group of mercenaries, but you learn that about Saw, and I guess for Luthen, it's kind of a wake up call that not everyone's going to be on the same page in the rebellion, and there's more work to do than just saying, "Yeah, we all hate the Empire. Let's all get together." There's going to be different rebel cells with different values and whatnot, and that's going to be a struggle for them moving forward to get the rebellion to be how they want it to be, which is a unified rebel cell.
Yeah, and Nick D, anything else you remember from the Saw Luthen interactions here before they meet me up the second time? 'Cause I know the first time was like we were talking about on the pod, talking about like, wow, like this is like the first time, like again, like Saw walk like usually like Luthen walks the room, he's in charge of the room. Here he's not in charge of the room at all.
Yeah, and it's I think when Luthen talks to Mon Mothma for the first time, you know, they have, or not the first time, maybe the second time, um she he has that moment where he's like, sometimes you got to do these really difficult things in order to make progress happen. And then he comes up to Saw and he's like, you're like, oh boy, like this is an extreme guy. And I think, if Luthen seems like he's getting kind of extreme until you pit him up against somebody like Saw, and then you're like, okay, no, there's way worse out there that are everybody's trying to do the same thing, but there's way different ways to go about it.
Yeah, and like I just think it's interesting. He walked in there, Nick, for expecting to convince Saul, like, oh, like we need, extra manpower to go raid this power station. You guys like to fight. Let's do this. And Saul's like, no, I don't think you're right. I don't want to do it this way.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm going to repeat what I said because I really believe it in that there's a lot of work to do. And Luthen's now learning this. It's not just we all hate the Empire, let's team up. There's different values and different ways that people want to handle it. And that's going to be a big struggle for the rebellion moving forward, which obviously they eventually get over that and they do create a unified rebellion, but it's a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, and we do see this where like especially on the Aldani heist, which is all like Luthen's crew, we see how they're valuing things. They're sort of like, okay, we're not killing anybody. We're just gonna like, tie people up, leave them in the corner. We're gonna take the things and run. We're only gonna like cause harm if we have to. Whereas Saw is like, okay, I'll just blow up a bridge. I don't want to care innocent people as long as take some Empire down with me.
Right. Right.
All right, so you guys ready to go to that last arc for Luthen?
Yes.
All right, so in the finale arc, Luthen hears back from Saw, who is reconsidering and says, you know what, I'm ready to help attack the power station, but he tells him to stand down, tells him the ISB knows about the attack, so don't expose yourself, also not reveal that he's the one who tipped the ISB off about what's going on. On his way, and because at this point the ISB had captured one of the participants in the attack and learned the information that way. On his way back to Coruscant, Luthen's followed by an Imperial patrol. He managed to destroy his pursuers with his ship. Really, the one like action sequence he had in that last episode that was in space with that laser sword thing. It sliced ships like a lightsaber. He learns on Marva Andor's funeral and heads to Ferrix to work with Vel and Cinta to kill Cassian. When he gets there, he sees the riot that comes from Marva's speech. He gets inspired, heads back to his ship, finds Cassian waiting with the offer to either kill him or take him into the rebellion. He ends the season with a big smile, like, okay, I got the guy I wanted fully on my side. So I think a big winner of season one, Nick D, is Luthen.
Yeah. Where was he on your guys' character draft? Not the character draft, sorry, the MVP board. Do you remember where he landed on that?
I can look it up. I'm sure he was very high.
Yeah, you guys talk. You guys talk. I'll look it up. Don't come to me. I'm gonna look it. I'm going back into the
arc. Yeah, I think it's this final arc is great because you see Luthen finally take action. The first time you meet him, he's just kind of planning things and he's like a little nervous. Is it going to come to fruition? And then that sequence where that tractor beam thing is pulling him in and he blows that up, and then this whole sequence, you're finally seeing Luthen as a guy that can also like put his money where his mouth is. It's not just like, I'm not just going to plan things and sit on the sidelines. He's willing to almost get his hands a little bit dirty. And I think that's important for Luthen's character.
Nick, you want to let the audience remember where Luthen is on the MVP board?
I couldn't find it already, and you told me you had it. So
yeah, so he is number 2 on the LVP board.
Okay,
MVP board heading into the season.
You said LVP board. You mean?
I mean MVP board. He's number 2 on MVP board behind Cassian Andor.
Which makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a +4 in season 1.
I hate our lists when we look back at them later because we have guys on there who are in one episode or something, and I feel like it's so silly to actually like rank them. But I don't know. We don't know how long they're going to be in the show when we're watching it. Like when we're watching that episode of Obi-Wan, and we gave Flea and his friends the negative, and it's like we don't see them again. It's like stupid.
But they sucked that episode, though. We were grading that episode.
Oh, I know, but like we don't know that as the audience, like that they're not going to be in anymore. But then looking back at it years later, and you look at our LVP board, it says Flea and the gang and negative. Like, who the hell is that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I look at our board right now. Tim with two M's got a -3 for season 1.
Well, Tim stands out for how miserable he was.
The,
Yeah,
bo-
I remember Tim.
the bottom 4 of the board are very memorable people.
That's good.
Yes.
Was Karn there?
Yeah, Karn was there. He was running away from everybody else.
That's a shame. We've mentioned it before.
Yeah, not a
Karn
bad
was,
character.
yeah, it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, he did a lot of stupid things.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to Luthen.
Well, actually, no. I guess like every phrase, it was 100% his fault.
Yeah, he did a lot of stupid
The
things.
thing, it wasn't his fault. It was his fault.
Great character, returns a great acting by Kyle Solar, but like
Yeah.
things. Anyway, so Nick, I think also in terms of Luthen in season 1, I think at the end here, like I do think like it's a satisfying moment for him when he gets to Ferrix. He sees the riot break out, and the people like rebelling against the stormtroopers and having a big success, and seeing Brasso use Marva's brick to slug stormtroopers. Like that definitely like warmed his heart.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like his plan is coming to fruition in a good way, not like Palpatine.
Yeah. And that was a valuable pickup to get Cassie and Nick D, because not only does he like probably pick up Cassie, but he picks up like all Cassie's friends.
Yeah, and we have the benefit of knowing what's going to happen in the future. So bringing Cassian on board is going to work out for what they're trying to do.
Yeah. And we do get like confirmation. Also, the finale talked about this last week in Dedra's storyline that like this attack on the power station gets foiled and like everyone in it gets executed here. So Luthen Lily has to decide when he tells Saw, like, like I it's been exposed. Don't go involved in this. Like we want you still on the board here, coming in the mix. So like he sacrificed a few to make sure he keeps his bigger pieces on the board, namely the form of Saw's cell and keeping his spy well implanted.
Yeah, Luthen kind of proves that, he's capable of making decisions that are difficult, but not being as extreme as somebody like a Saw would.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you guys want to add on Luthen before you go to Mon Mothma's side?
Nothing from me.
All right. Let's go to Mon Mothma here for she sits out the entire first arc, which is not surprising. It's based pretty much entirely on Ferrix. The second arc, we see her. She's trying to stand up for humanitarian cause in the Senate, but no one seems to care. We see the scenes where like there's people who are just not even bothering showing up for the pods of the Senate. So she goes to meet with Luthen. She returns to work. He's trying to build a charitable foundation to help people in need, but we also meet her husband Perrin, who sucks, and her daughter Lita, who also kind of sucks. And she learns that the Empire is looking into her finance to figure out if she's been aiding the rebellion here. So I think the big development here for this arc, Nick D, is that like we get to learn that like Mon Mothma, we meet in Return of the Jedi, and then we see in Rebel where we see her is basically like, oh, like sort of like this like a priestess figure in the rebellion, where she's like the one who like sort of everybody answers to, like that, like at this point she has a family life that she's trying to maintain while trying to do right by people in the Empire.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that. And then it's also just interesting to see that she's still trying to kind of hang on to the idea that maybe like this government is being run properly and that she's able to do things the right way while kind of having this little thing on the side. And you see her at her like Senate meetings, there's like nobody there, nobody supporting her, and then she goes home and her husband's against her, and just it's a good setting up for like showing how like the Mon Mothma you see later on like she didn't just get there. It wasn't easy for her to get there, and you're seeing the struggles of that.
Yeah, Nick Fraietta. Remember like how much fun we had when we first met Mon Mothma's family?
Yeah, I do. I also remember having a lot of fun when we went to the Senate, which was my favorite part of the show. But yes, seeing my Mothma family was awesome. Again, I feel like she's been in more things than she has.
Yes.
if that makes sense. Like, I guess technically I don't know, is she technically in Revenge of the Sith, or is she technically not in Revenge of the Sith?
Well, I mean, canonically, she was.
Canonically, then I like that. Canonically, she's in Revenge of the Sith. She's in Rebels. She was in Return of the Jedi. We saw her in Rogue One. Now we're seeing her here. But I guess I don't know. But what made me love this show so much, besides the fact that it was really good, was seeing real life people
Yeah.
in the show. And I think that's what I love about Karn. What I love about seeing like Mon Mothma's family. Like you're just like seeing real people in the Star Wars universe instead of like think about it. When we're watching the movies, we're seeing the celebrities.
Yes.
Like Anakin Skywalker. Everyone on the street knows who he is.
Yeah.
Who's the man on the street? We never know. Now we're finding out. Like who's Cyril Karn?
Yeah. Yeah. Who's the random beat cop like on Morlana 1?
Yeah. I'm interested to learn more about those characters, and that's exactly what we're getting.
Yeah, I will also point out for the audience again here, our bottom four of the LVP board, Perrin and her husband's there with a very comfortable spot.
Yeah, I mean, her husband uh
Kind of
kind
sucks.
kind of sucks. I think was it was is it implied or did they actually outright say like was her marriage with him kind of like an arranged thing? Because
Yeah,
that's what it
yeah,
was, right?
yeah, because the culture, the culture she's from, like, is big on that.
Right. And then I mean the biggest development is, she kind of uses her husband as a scapegoat with the whole stage gambling thing in case to justify money being missing. But like that's kind of the only value he really brings. He's like super against her and
Yeah,
not a very good character. Yeah.
yeah, she's ready to shove him in front of the train if the train comes to her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll go to the next arc for her, where we find out about the Empire looking into her money. She ends up meeting with her old friend Tay Kalma, the banker who are accessing her family funds. She also meets up with Vel, who we learn is her cousin, and tells her to maintain a low profile to hide her rebellion title she's clearly aware of. And we do see that like the Empire is closing in, and they set up Perrin to take the fall for this. We haven't seen that come to fruition yet, but like the idea is like, oh, if they're looking into my money, he's gambling, which is why I need more money. So that's the situation with Tay Kalma. He realizes the only way to help her get more money is to meet with a shady businessman named Dabo Skoldun. They meet up here, and Scout is only interested in helping if Mon agrees to have a meet between his son and her daughter Lita, which is the first step towards marriage in Chandrilan culture. So basically, she's being asked to like sell her daughter's future for the rebellion at the end of this arc, Nick Fraietta.
Yeah, and I mean, we know she does it. That's a little spoiler right there, but she's just to put her money. I don't know, put her daughter where her mouth is. I guess she has to.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, she has to sacrifice. I guess I don't want to say her daughter because I'm like she's killing her daughter, but she has to sacrifice the happiness maybe of her daughter, or the potential happiness of her daughter for the greater good of the galaxy.
Yeah.
So that's one of the first steps. We're really in the early stages of rebellion here, and or at least formalized rebellion, and sacrifices were made, and this is one of them.
Yeah, and Nick D, I do also think it's interesting with the situation here where like it's not even like that, like we for all we know, like Davo's son is not a bad guy, but like she's getting basically setting up her daughter to go into a very shady lifestyle if she's going into marrying into the crime family.
Yeah. And it runs this is the third arc, right? This runs perfectly in line with um with Luthen because they're asking him what did you give up and he's like I never had a chance to have anything like and now Mon Mothma who's trying to do things in a above the board kind of way is learning like it's not going to work and now she has to give up everything and that thing is her daughter in this potential arranged marriage with this very known shady person and it's this a big theme of this is what are you willing to give up to achieve what you want and we're seeing Mon Mothma go through it.
Yeah, and I think that's really it on the Mon Mothma stuff because she ends the season. Basically, we see that like her daughter's going in more into the Chandrilan culture stuff. She's really into that. She's not thrilled about it, but says, and her husband's clueless as always. Like, like what's wrong with the meet? Like, like if she wants to set this up, let's set this up. So they do arrange the meeting between her daughter and Dabo's son. That's really end the Mon Mothma storyline, season 1.
Yeah, she doesn't do I guess there's not like a ton that happens with her necessarily in this one in this season, but you can like there's a lot set up. I'm very interested to see how involved she now gets now that she's shown that she's willing to give up a lot for this.
Yeah, so I think we should go ahead and talk about season two. I do want to go back to the interview that Tony Gilroy did with Entertainment Weekly a few weeks ago, and he has some comments about both characters. So we'll start with the Mon Mothma stuff here. And EW says Mon Mothma had to walk his incredible delicate line in season one. I'll say I knew hope she's gone public. So what might we see from her? And he says, canonically, there's the moment where she leaves the Senate, and that's in our timeline. So we're definitely dealing with that. But I would say of all the characters in the show, of all the hellacious things people go through, all the difficulties and hardships, I don't think anybody's a harder road than she does. She has to do everything that everybody else does with all the tension, fear, and anxiety. She has to do it in public. She has nowhere to hide, and this season just ramps that up to an almost unbearable point. What Genevieve is going to do in the second season, we realized in the first season what a brilliant actress she was, and that we hadn't found the limits of what she could do. We still haven't found them. But the opportunity to write for her and write her story large is very important to me in the second season. So sounds to me like we're getting a very big Mon Mothma season two storyline, Nick Fraietta.
I hope so. I mean, we seen a little bit in the trailer already, but I can't wait because this was my favorite part of the show. Like I mentioned, the common person, and also see, I've always wondered what the Senate was like in the, I guess, early stages of the rebellion, later stages of the Empire. Because there's that line in A New Hope when Tarkin says that the Emperor has abolished the um
Got it.
the Senate, and I'm like, they still had the Senate up till that point. What was it like? So seeing that in like Bad Batch a little bit, seeing it here, it's really cool to see like how he's still tricking people into thinking that he's not evil. It's like 20 years later, and they're blowing planets up, and there are people out there, not many, based on what you see, but there are people out there who support him. It's crazy.
Yeah. And Nick D, in terms of the Mon Mothma stuff here, I know we already had the footage from the trailer, which clearly we figured out later on is her daughter's wedding, and we know the Gorman massacre is coming, and she's heavily probably affected by that. And we feel like this might be a situation to tie these storylines together where she sort of leaves the Senate in protest of the treatment of the citizens of Gorman, and we see her, I think, slowly transform to maybe we get a little bit of build where she pops up in Rebels in season three when she's with the Ghost Crew trying to recruit people to the rebellion. I do think like we might start seeing past that way because like we're getting the transition out of like the fancy like wardrobe, fancy haircut on Mothma to the plain Jane version we see during the later Rebel stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like we know where she's gonna go, but we don't know how she's gonna get there. And that's I think where it's set up to like really. There's a lot of pieces in place where they can do a whole lot with her. And I think talk about a character who's just like in the original movies, just like there to now being like I'm kind of most excited for her this season. Like this show did a really good job with that.
Yeah. Nick Craig, anything else you want to add on Mon Mothma season two, Pat? We go to Luthen's.
No, I just want to say I completely agree with what Nick said. That's the beauty of prequels. You know where it's going to end up, but you want to see how it gets there. That's and essentially. I mean, I know this is a prequel to original and sequel to prequels. There's so much going on in the Star Wars universe, but that's essentially what this is. So
It's
very
amazing.
exciting. Essentially, it's a prequel.
Yeah, it's amazing work too for a character who was really just like a one note, like basically high priest of the Republic of the Rebellion in episode six. Basically turned into this complex character over the course of these other shows and properties.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been amazing. Not only just Mon Mothma, there's so many characters that we've seen for a split second to have ended up being like centerpieces in shows, episodes, arcs, if you will, and like there's a guy, like a random guy is in a scene in A New Hope, and he has a 4 or 5 page Wikipedia article already.
Yeah,
So it's really very cool. This universe has come a long way.
it has. And let's go to Luthen. The quote on Luthen now from the same article on Entertainment Weekly. This is from Tony Gilroy. And it says, Luthen is very committed to the rebellion, according to Entertainment Weekly, but he's also a slippery character. How much should we trust him going into season two? And Tony Gilroy says, I think of him as a startup CEO. Some guy built a business in his garage. For 15 years, he built a revolution in his garage. He and Clea. Then in Aldani in season one, they went public, and now they're out there. Now for the next 4 years, how you scale your company up? It's multinational. How you scale a little business that was so successful in the garage and build it out. Your business is based on secrecy and paranoia. How hard is that to do? And how well are you going to play with others? How welcome are you going to be to new ideas? These are all going to be the friction for him in the second half. He has one speed as to make this all happen. He'd do anything for Revolution, anything. So it feels like we're getting more of the sort of like dynamics he's gonna run into. Like, okay, now this is not just something that I have in the back of my store. Now, like everybody's involved. We're getting a bunch of different cells involved. We build different ways to do things, and like we've seen Nick Fraietta. Luthen's a control freak. He's not gonna, I think, like take too well to having people clash his desired plan of action.
And as I mentioned now twice, this will be the third time he's going to have to learn to play with others because the rebels are not. It's not going to be that easy.
Yeah. And let me throw this out to both of you because I feel like this is a very obvious sort of like call to make here. Is there any shot that we get through season 2 and Luthen is not dead at the end?
I don't know.
I don't think he makes it.
I don't think he makes it either. I think at most maybe there's like something like an explosion, a ship crashes something and he's on it and it's not confirmed, but I don't think it's clear that he lives. I think it's either he's dead or nobody knows.
I think that speech he gives you in season 1 is sort of the tip off here, the foreshadowing that like, yeah, like I'm not going to see the end of this. Like I'm not going to be there when the sun comes out again.
Yeah, I mean, that's also in my mind just a way to show the audience that this is where like I keep saying, I always say Cassian. I feel like people say Andor, but
Yeah.
anyway, it's the way that Cassian learns how to be selfless from that. But I agree though. I agree with you that that speech is telling that he's not going to make it.
Yeah, and like it'll be very poetic, Nick, that he is accurate that like all this hard work he does, he's not going to see any of it. Like payoff.
Yes, it's gonna be the same with Cassian and Jyn Erso, huh?
Yeah, for the most part.
No, but the whole part.
Yeah, well, I mean, they know they got the plans out, basically. That they learned before they die.
No, they don't know. They said, "Do you think anyone?" They said they got it out. They said, "Do you think anyone was out there to hear it?"
They know they sent it out there, so
Yeah, they know they sent it. They don't know that anyone received it.
yeah,
It goes even further than that. It's incredible how they literally die not knowing if their mission was successful.
yep, and incredible that all this came out of one line of dialogue in A New Hope. This entire show and prequel movie and so on.
Dude, it wasn't even the line of dialogue. It was in the crawl.
I mean, they do say it when
They do say it in the movie as well, but it was in the crawl where they mentioned that the plans were stolen.
yeah, one line of dialogue turned into this.
Yeah,
Tells you the power of having a good idea.
yeah, and it is a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
Really is. I think that for whatever reason, when they announced this show, I don't remember when they announced it. Must have been like,
It was in that batch of stuff that they dropped like
was it like in 2019, 2020 maybe?
yeah, it was on the wall when the list of the 25 products they had coming.
Yeah, for whatever reason, I was just like, I mean, I was excited because I loved Rogue One and I loved Cassian's character, but I felt like it wasn't going to do very well because I thought like to myself, I don't know who's really interested in that. What are they going to say? Like, we're just going to learn about this guy's backstory, not thinking like, oh, this is going to be the backstory of the rebellion, and we've kind of seen it in Rebels, but like, we're going to see a different light of that, a different side of that, maybe a darker tone to that. We didn't know that at the time, and look what we got.
Yeah, and Nick D'Alessio sort of rounds out here. Like, imagine like when we learned this show was coming out here. Like, I'm sure you thought back in 2020 when they put that graphic on the wall and they said Andor, like a prequel to Rogue One about the love interest for Jyn Erso, and we learn about him, and you're like, of all the characters in Rogue One, you pick this guy, and then it turns out you have a great show out of it.
I wasn't excited. I was like, I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm gonna watch it, but like I don't know what this is. And it turns out it's the most critically acclaimed primetime Emmy nomination thing. And it kind of, this one, and then I mean, Skeleton Crew's not on the same level, but it's almost like these shows that we like think aren't gonna be much of anything turn out to be the ones that we're like, oh, this is actually something here. It's just interesting how that's happened. And then the shows where we're like super excited for are the ones where like, oh boy, they kind of fumbled this one.
Yeah, they did. But that's it for us this week here. So as I mentioned top of the show, Nick Fraietta, next week we're gonna we even talked about Rogue One a little bit today. We're gonna redrop our coverage of Rogue One we did prior to Andor season one. So that episode's gonna be coming out in the feed next week to sort of remind everybody that we're talking about the middle of the story here. We saw the beginning in season one. Now we refresh ourselves on the ending.
Yeah, I hope that that episode was good that we put out. I don't remember.
I know, like we had a very long chat about that movie.
Well, rightfully so. I mean, I don't know. I think maybe I'm not saying it's the best Star Wars movie, but I think it's my favorite Star Wars movie.
I think it's the most underrated Star Wars movie.
A lot of people love it. A lot of people love it, including me.
Yeah. All right. So Nick D, once again, thanks for coming on, filling in for Pete today. And should be back from the shop in 2 weeks. But if people want to follow you on Twitch, how can they do that?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, so go to twitch.tv/the recovery room. I said to Mike before, Nick, you'll like the series I just started. Maybe the Hyrule guys can get back together. I'm doing a Ocarina of Time randomizer.
I've
So
seen those, and I never watched a lot of them. I just I know they exist, and I know how they work. And it's very cool. I do plan to watch that. When will you be live?
um actually, well, but we're recording this on a Monday, so tomorrow.
I
So
will
yeah,
probably tune in at some point if I'm available when you're live. I like those.
cool. Yeah.
All right. So definitely check that out here. Nick, one more time. People want to follow us on social media. How can they do that?
At Sky Guys Podcast, pretty much everywhere. And if you want to email the pod, it's at Sky Guys Pod.
All right. You can also follow me.
I gotta say, it's at skyguyspod@gmail.com. I didn't mention it at the top of the show either.
Yeah. So you want to send in your feedback, you can email us. And if you get us in, we will definitely read your comments on the air.
We will.
All right. You can also follow me on social media, mphillips331. It's MPHILIPS 331. This week over on the Just End the Suffering podcast, we recap the first weekend of March Madness at Troy Moriello. So that's going to be out in the feed as well. And opening day's coming up here in a few days, Nick. So baseball season's back as well.
It was, but to me, the biggest surprise of that first weekend was that SIU Edwardsville upset Houston in the first round.
Yeah. Blew up my bracket.
Yeah, blew up a lot of brackets, but SIU, good for them.
Yeah. And we'll let everybody know how the situation is going here with the bracket pools and so on and so forth. As we'll keep like just in the suffering, but like we are all in a bracket pool, the three of us. So like we'll let the audience know who's faring the best at the end of the season if you are interested in this.
I am very confident it'll be you, considering I've watched about 6 college basketball games all season. All of them are all our alma mater.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you also, like also have played bracket pools. Only one of us in this chat has won, and it's not me.
Well, it wasn't me, so I know who it is.
And guess how many games of college basketball I watch? 0, baby. I think that year that I won, Mike, I think you called me and you were like, "Hey, you gotta have your bracket in like 20 minutes," and I was like, "Uh-oh, bing, 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 bing," and then I won. So
That's usually how it works on these pools.
yep.
All right, we'll be back next week to let you in on the Rogue One secret, and then we have another fun preseason episode coming out at the beginning of April before we get into the Andor preseason coverage for one final time. But until then, may the Force be with you.